Hi, this is Tom Needham, and you are listening to The Sounds of Film, and I'm so excited to have on the phone with us a true legend, Alexander Payne. He's a writer and director. He's one of the most original voices in American cinema. You probably know him for his work on Citizen Ruth, Election, About Schmidt, Sideways, The Descendants, Nebraska. His film Sideways won the Best Film at the Golden Globes. He's a two-time Oscar winner. And his newest film, Downsizing, is out on Paramount's Blu-ray and DVD. Downsizing is a dystopian comedy starring Matt Damon and Kristen Wiig. And in this film, there's a scientific breakthrough that makes it possible to shrink people. Eventually, small societies are created, and people who opt to downsize find out that they can live more luxurious lives than when they were normal size. However, Matt Damon's character quickly learns that things are not as perfect in this world as he had hoped. Alexander, thank you so much for joining us on The Sounds of Film.
It's my pleasure.
Oh, man, Alexander, I love this movie. What was your inspiration for this film? I understand that you were working on it for many years.
Yeah, I didn't mean to be working on it for many years. It just happened that way. Jim Taylor, my co-writer, and I came up with the idea after Sideways. We had some, as you suggest in your introduction, we had some modicum of success with Sideways. And a couple of other things were happening. Bush 2 had been reelected, and we thought he was bad. And we were itching to do maybe something on a larger canvas and also maybe return to some of the, light political social satire we had done with in Citizen Ruth and Election. So anyway, in 2006, we used this idea, which actually Jim's brother had been floating to us just as kind of a romp. Not a romp, but without sort of social satire elements to it, just if his brother had always said, if you were only yay big, your resources would last so much longer, and you'd be so much richer, So we said, well, how would that idea really, really come about? And we thought, well, probably Scandinavians would invent that as a panacea to overpopulation and climate change, and that was our into the story.
Well, it's such a great concept. I mean, one of the things that I love about this movie is that you kind of cynically show how people in life are often motivated by selfish motives. And, and that, like in this movie, supposedly the people were going to choose to downsize to save the environment, to save the planet. But then, as you mentioned a second ago, they quickly learn that if they downsize, they'll be able to live a more luxurious life than they did before.
That's how you get people to do it.
Yeah.
That's why the idea could have worked, is that there's self-interest involved. People don't really do anything without self-interest.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. I mean, is that the way you really do view people in life?
Well, don't you? Look around. I mean, we make a lot of hay out of the exceptions.
Right.
We call them saints and give them awards, Nobel Peace Prizes, because all the rest of us are just, wriggling around in the pigsty trying to, eat our own food, basically.
I mean...
Look, I'm exaggerating for comic effect. We all know lots of good people, but yes, in general, people do things out of self-interest. That's why we are the dominant species.
You could have just settled on doing a funny movie just on this world you created in this movie, which is really spectacular. The way you brought this.
Well, maybe that would have been a bigger hit. This one didn't do so well at the box office.
Well,
who knows? Maybe we took the wrong path.
I don't know. Maybe it just is going to take a little longer for it to find its audience. But it's an important movie. I mean, instead you decided to concentrate on some serious themes in this very funny movie. And one of the things that you bring up, and you kind of touched on it a little bit before talking about George Bush, but there are some real critiques of capitalism and income inequality. And I was wondering, how exactly does this film allow you to touch on these subjects?
Well, I think it does, and maybe, some negative reviews we read said it tries to touch on too many things. It tried to use this premise as a social satire to point a finger and a lot of different things: classism, immigration, consumerism, materialism, obviously environmentalism, and it's how that's screwing us up. I was happy it did. I like making a movie that we thought was about something, but not in a boring, pedantic way. It's still a comedy, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that criticism was unfair. I mean, I think if, Candide came out today, people would be criticizing it in some way or another. One of the things that you're well known for in all of your films is that there's often a kind of melancholy feel to your stories, and that they feature characters who are in some way dissatisfied with their lot in life, and certainly Matt Damon's character in this movie kind of fits that description. I recently had Rebecca Miller on my program, and she was talking about her dad, Arthur Miller. She has a movie out on HBO now, and I asked her, I didn't know what to expect, if there was any way that Arthur Miller was similar to Willie Loman, and I didn't think definitely that there would be a similarity, but because obviously he's very successful, and Willie Loman wasn't. But she said there was a lot of similarities, and she, I won't bore you with all the description of what she said, but I was wondering, with yourself, you're a very successful director, writer, and yet you always go back to these characters. Is there something in these characters that reflects who you are in any way?
Charlie Chaplin was one of the richest and most successful movie stars. Whom did he play? A tramp.
Mm.
I'm not quite... I appreciate the question, but of course we find our own archetypes within ourselves, which are a separate question from where we happen to be at this moment in life. I think it happens to come from where we come from. Chaplin was a tramp for a while as a youth, very young boy, with his mother and brother scrounging the streets of London for things to eat. Of course, they had an acting career as well. But I think we find within ourselves, and the archetype, if I can say that, the comic archetype that Jim Taylor and I gravitated to for a few films, not Citizen Ruth, yes, Election, yes, Sideways, yes, About Schmidt, a little bit Descendants, but he's a wealthy dude, different deal. A little bit Nebraska. Yeah, the melancholy, dissatisfied white dude from Omaha whose aspirations in life clash very much with his reality. We've just found that as a comic archetype, and we relate to that. I'm from Omaha. He's from Bellevue, Washington. We both come from middle-class backgrounds. And just for some reason, now, having said that, I want to do stuff completely different from now on. I'm tired of being, saying, "Oh, I see a pattern in your work, and this is what you do." Like, oh, Jesus, really? Am I that boring and predictable? Anyway.
Well, I don't know that it's such a horrible thing. I mean, and it's great that you want to do new stuff, but there needs to be people who, speak about these characters, and you do it so well. One of the things that I think kind of contributes to the overall maybe melancholy mood, in addition to your writing and directing, is the music. And this show is called The Sounds of Film, and besides doing interviews, we play a lot of film soundtrack music. And I've loved your soundtracks for many, many years. We've been playing them on The Sounds of Film, and we even had Rolf Kent on, and he talked about some of the soundtrack that he's done with you. What is your connection to the composer when you're making a movie like Rolf? And what is it that you like about, for example, his work in terms of what it brings to your movies?
Well, first of all, it's not a composer like Rolf, it's the composer Rolf.
Right.
He's the only composer I've ever worked with. The only times, I made 7 features, 5 with him. The 2 exceptions were The Descendants, where I thought it would be appropriate to use 100% pre-existing Hawaiian music, and then Nebraska, where I used the fine Mark Orton and his Tin Hat Trio, just because that sound, which we were temping with, fit the film like a glove. So I just pursued that. I was going to work with Rolf, and I had to what I like about Rolf is very simple. I like melody, film score. I'm super old-fashioned. I like themes attached to different characters, and themes which we reprise and develop, which become motifs. And I like melody. And Rolf, I feel, is very, very gifted at melody. I never want, what do they call them, pads or just ambiental music for my films. I like melody. I like the class. I like Bernard Herrmann and Alex North and Ennio Morricone and Norota, among many others. But people who really stand out with melody and beautiful melody. I think no matter what you're expressing, the music should be beautiful. And thank you for bringing up Rolf's work on this film, because I think he really outdid himself. And I lament that you are one of the few people who, at least to me, have noted on his fine work for that film.
Well, it's often the case when there's a great director that they do choose to work with a composer over and over again, and you certainly have done it. I do have to say, for the record, I love his new score to Downsizing, and we're going to be playing it tonight on The Sounds of Film. Just to let you know, probably one of the top 3 soundtracks over the last 30 years that we've featured on the show, by far the most popular, is Sideways. We're still playing it today, and that is a very different soundtrack. It's a jazzy kind of thing, and I was wondering how much you had to say in terms of the direction that he went in on that particular film, because it's very unique.
Much so. I start movies with an idea of what the music could be, and Sideways, I had always wanted to. My idea for Sideways was that it's an Italian comedy from the early 60s, but told with the film grammar of an American film of the 1970s. And I knew even before shooting that I wanted a jazz score, because I very much like the score to a 1957 film called, in the English title is Big Deal on Madonna Street. And the composer was Piero Umiliani. It's a fantastic film and a magnificent jazz score. So I was temping with that, and then eased Rolf into it that way.
This film is on a much bigger scale than some of your earlier movies, and I was wondering, how did you like working on this kind of scale compared to some of your earlier movies?
Sometimes it's fun, and sometimes it's a drag. It's fun when you get to have thousands of extras, when you need thousands of extras. It's fun when with working with Rolf. He said, well, let's have a 90-piece orchestra and record it at the old MGM stage, the magnificent stage where they also recorded Gone with the Wind and Dr. Zhivago and Lawrence of Arabia. I said, yeah, let's do that. So we have the resources to do those fun things, to have that big toy kit. Where it's a drag is, in general, even on smaller movies, on American films, I grow frustrated with the machinery of American film, filmmaking, that you just have so damn many trucks and so many people just to shoot a very intimate scene. And you say, well, in Europe we wouldn't need that. And they go, yeah, well, that's Europe, but here you do. And I go, well, why? Why are we so different? Well, here we need 30 damn trucks just to record,
right?
Just to film 2 people talking in a restaurant.
Yeah.
I get a little... and then this happens on every film. On every film, the producers look at me and like, "Oh, are you playing this Mr. Naive card again?" I'm like, "Yeah. Why do we need all these people and all these trucks?" And on Downsizing, it was on steroids, even more so. So I like an intimacy with material I'm shooting.
Is there anything that you got to do besides working with a bigger orchestra or whatever for the music, in terms of the hands-on filmmaking that you got to do that you never had an opportunity to do before?
Oh yeah, shooting on stage. I never shot on a soundstage before. I had small sets built. Usually have to shoot a bathroom, or on About Schmidt I had to build half a house because of Jack Nicholson's schedule. But those we built on we'd get a warehouse in Omaha and build that stuff. But a real honest-to-God soundstage where you say, you're about to say action and a bell goes off like you see in the movies. I'd never said that before. And it was cool, like the set in Downsizing where the interior of the apartment building, it's a converted construction trailer where the Vietnamese dissident woman lives.
Yeah.
It was richly satisfying to see that realized, not only as I had imagined it, but better. And for that, we have the largest soundstage in North America, located in Toronto. That set, just the basic part of it, cost about $1 million smackers, and then we had the money to do digital extension. It's like glorified matte painting. What's not really there, but you put up green screen, you put it in post.
Right.
So I got to learn all these tools of big sets and a good lesson in visual effects. We haven't talked about that yet.
Yeah.
And it's great, but I return to my point that what draws me to filmmaking is the intimacy of the predicament and relationships of the characters.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because my next question was really more about the fact that, as I said in the opening, the thing I love about you is that you have a unique voice, and I think that stems from the fact that you're not just a director, you're also a writer. I had mentioned Miller earlier, and in his documentary, he spoke about how he feels that the writer's job is to find the truth in the human experience and to bring that into his art, so that the ordinary person, can learn something about life. I was wondering, like, when you're writing and when you're making films, what do you feel, besides obviously entertaining the audience, which I know is always always the number one consideration, but what is your number one motivation when you're writing and directing in terms of your work?
Honestly, the answer is my number one motivation is I want to make a movie. I like movies. I like the act of it. So sort of behind a discussion of content, which is really what you're asking, behind even that is the desire to work with this clay. Other people have the desire to make a painting, the desire to write a poem. You get it. So I like movie making. I just adore it. And then when it comes to the story, either conceiving or identifying a story outside of myself, I guess I look for stories which I believe could happen in real life. I like, and it even guides me as a writer, and Jim and me as a writing team. Our guidepost as we write is, well, what would really happen? We could come up with the bogus movie version of it. Anyone could, but how would this really happen? And then you sort of think, how would it really happen? How would someone really feel? And then fashion a succinct movie version of that.
So even in a movie that's sort of fantasy, like Downsizing, you're still trying to do that.
Yeah, very much so. But given the grand scientific social satire, whatever label you want to put it, what if people could do this? Still, our style, and I think you see it in the film, concentrates on the banality of it.
Yeah.
It's like on a moment-to-moment basis, well, this would sort of be, like the Downsizing sequence, which is kind of this fun,
I love that.
ballet, a wordless ballet. It's about 8 or 9 minutes long with wonderful music by Rolf, by the way.
Yeah.
Happens about, 40 minutes into the picture. Even there, it's about, you see these big sets and the cool stuff going on and the fascination of the process, but you see how bored the workers are, and, it just has everything in life eventually acquires a quite banal patina, and that's what we find real and delightful.
And if I can ask you one last question.
Anti-movie. Movies often, at least American commercial movies, want to certainly beautify, if not idealize, aspects of life. Certainly when I made Election, I looked at high school movies. I don't believe any of these are high schools. I never see golden sunlight coming in these beautiful windows, and look how well dressed all these students are. You go to a high school, it doesn't look like that at all. So I like a very documentary approach to my filmmaking, and that even begins at the screenwriting level. There's a documentary feel to fiction filmmaking and to fiction film comedy. And then that's what I try to do in the production design and in the photography.
You know, as you look back at this experience of downsizing, and this will be my last question, what is it that you are most proud of and hope that people take away from this film?
The triumph of the film is simply that I got it made. It was, you say how long I was working on it.
I can appreciate that, yeah.
Yes, the screenplay was difficult, but it was impossible to get financing it. Maybe rightly so, but we finally got one studio to make it in the way I wanted to. Bless his heart, a guy named Brad Gray at Paramount. And so the triumph of the film is really getting it made. Some people really dig it and get it and understand what Jim and I were going for. Others don't currently. But a more general answer to that question is that whenever anybody sees any of my movies, I think, well, I hope they've watched a film which they think was entertaining, well-made, and made with joy. You can always tell a film which is made with joy from one which isn't. And no matter how dreary the subject matter can be, you always want a film made with joy and invention.
Well, I think that comes through in all of your work, and in particular, I want to recommend to my listeners that they check out Downsizing. It's one of my favorite films from this past year, and I'm in that camp of people but kind of went along with the ride and appreciate how ambitious your vision was, and it's also just hugely entertaining. It's very, very funny, and it makes you think a lot about a number of issues that we touched on, and I want to congratulate you. I really think you did an impressive job.
Thanks very much. It was fun to do. It was really fun.
Yeah, I could imagine. Well, Alexander, I hope that we can speak again in the future, and I want to wish you luck as you maybe go off in some other direction. I can't wait to find out what that's going to be.
Hey, man, I really appreciate the interest and the good words.
Okay, take it easy, Alexander, and
all right.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.